Today.
Yeah, good. Great.
My name is Scott Wallace, and I've been given an opportunity here to chat to you guys, have a bit of a yarn. Needs to be louder? Awesome. Perfect. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I just want to thank Lucy for bringing everyone together here today and creating such a safe, comfortable space, and bringing all these stalls and events and products and services here for us to all share in and to talk to people, engage with people, and hopefully learn a thing or two. So today I'm going to be discussing a couple of issues. I'm going to start by talking about the animal agriculture industry and the effects that our diets can actually have on our ecological footprint, and then talk about some of the experiences I've had through my studies and engaging in conservation and sustainability. So the animal agriculture industry, can I just get everyone's hand? Who's heard of the animal agriculture industry? Awesome. So yeah, so not everyone, and it's a term that's quite new for me. Only until a few years ago did I actually start hearing and learning about the animal agriculture industry. So what this industry is, it's a global industry which consists of both small-scale organic farms up to the broad-scale industrial agriculture system. So it's not just the big farms that I'll be addressing, it's the whole system of farming, regardless of how big the scale is. So the animal agriculture industry across the globe has continued to have a significant impact on water quality, water availability, on land, and also greenhouse gas emissions, and a whole bunch of other issues that I'm going to be addressing. So the reason why this industry can have a huge effect on our habitat and a loss of species is because we firstly need to go in and then clear land in order to usually grow crops or grow grasses as pasture to feed livestock. So we're clearing a lot of land just to grow food for animals within the livestock and farming industry. We also need a place for the animals to live. So we end up clearing a lot of vegetation, old remnant forest and habitat just to keep some animals in certain areas. So we hear a lot about, I suppose, urban developments and cities and towns that are expanding and encroaching onto habitat and clearing vegetation, and a lot about the mining industry as well and how that's threatening our ecosystem. So interestingly, between the years of 1989 and 2009, we had an unprecedented rate and scale of destruction and clearing of forest and vegetation in Australia. So they were clearing on average 400,000 hectares a year. I'm not sure how big this venue is, but this is a lot of vegetation. This is a lot of habitat that's being cleared for our development and for farming. Now, during those 2 decades, the land that was cleared for settlements and growing towns was only 1.5%. So only 1.5% of all that land was cleared for growing towns and cities. And the mining industry, any guesses as to how much land was cleared for the mining industry during those 2 decades? Any random numbers? What do people think? Any guesses? So it was only, sorry?
100,000 hectares.
100,000 hectares. 0.5% of all that land cleared during those 2 decades was for the mining industry. Only 0.5%. We hear so much about the mining industry threatening our forests, threatening vegetation, but during those 2 decades, not a lot was cleared for mining. Now, the animal agriculture industry during those 2 decades was the leading cause for clearing and deforestation. 92.5% of all the forests and lands cleared during those 2 decades was for farming and for animal agriculture. Over 90%. Now, this is an extremely alarming and concerning statistic that most of us haven't heard of and been exposed to. And to think that this is the leading driver of habitat loss and species loss and loss of biodiversity is really concerning. When it comes to total land use within Australia, over 50%, specifically 56% of Australia's total land, not just land that's available for farming, but 56% of Australia's total land is used for animal agriculture just for grazing. So this is over half of our country being used to grow grass, which has been grown after forests have been wiped out to feed animals, to feed livestock, which are then consumed by a minority of people. So In addition to the 56%, we've got about 1% of land which is cleared to grow crops to feed to animals. So in Australia, a lot of the farming animals are fed pasture and grasses. Not a lot of animals are fed crops. So say for example in the States, they clear a lot of area, they grow crops, grains, wheat, this sort of stuff, lots of soy to feed to livestock. In Australia it's quite the opposite, a lot of clearing to grow grasses and pasture. Now the effect of this industry in terms of water use, so nationally about 60% of the nation's water use is going towards agriculture. So not just animal agriculture, but the whole system of agriculture. Now of that 60%, we're looking around 58% of all that water is used for animal agriculture. So this is a huge amount of water that's going towards water for animals to drink, for them to survive, and also water going into growing crops and to grow grasses to feed to animals. So it's a very inefficient system where we're putting in more calories and protein in terms of feed and getting less out from the system. We're putting in so much water and not getting that out of the system. We're putting in so much land and not getting that return. So we hear a lot about climate change as well, and it's a very real issue. And the effects of the animal agriculture industry in terms of its contribution to greenhouse gases has been seriously underestimated and understated for decades now. So globally, there's an organisation, it's under the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organisation. They have an estimate of how much greenhouse gases globally is going towards the animal ag sector. And one of their estimates is 18% of global greenhouse gas emissions going towards from farming. Now this by itself is more than the entire transport sector in the world. The estimates for the transport sector, we're looking at around 13%. So there's more emissions from farming animals, I suppose the whole process of farming animals, than all the emissions from cars, boats, planes, trains, you name it. More emissions from farming. Now when I came across this statistic, I was quite overwhelmed to think, why haven't we heard about animal ag industry? Why isn't this information being shared with us? And it was quite alarming when I started researching into more stats and facts. The truth is out there for those who seek it. And doing some more research, I came across a least conservative estimate from an organisation called World Watch Institute. And if anyone wants any of these references after my presentation, come have a chat. I'll give you the links to all these papers and articles, and you can read them for yourself and make up your own opinion. And World Watch Institute estimate that the estimate that the FAO have created has really underestimated the true environmental impact of this industry. So they've taken the United Nations estimate and then said, hey, these guys have failed to account for a lot of the land clearing from the industry, which as we know, 56% of Australia's land has been cleared for the animal ag sector to grow pasture mainly. So that has a lot. When we're cutting down trees, we're putting out carbon. It's old carbon that's been stored, which we are just putting back into the system. And they've taken into account the full cycle of the agriculture industry. So the methane, which is coming from livestock, manure management, the clearing and burning of forest and land for farming, which a lot of these factors the UN hasn't taken into account. So they've taken that original estimate, added all these other components. And for those who aren't aware of the statistic, does anyone have a guess as to what's the percentage of greenhouse gases that I think coming from the animal ag sector globally? Any random guesses? How much do you reckon? 90? It's a lot. This estimate is around 51% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So over half of our emissions are estimated to come from the animal ag sector. Now, I hadn't heard about this. I've gone through. My background is environmental science. I've studied at Griffith University, which had the first environmental science course, definitely in Queensland. I'm not sure if it was in Australia or whether it was just in Queensland, but the first environmental course in Queensland or Oz. Now, 4 years of studying conservation, 4 years of studying environmental science. The term animal agriculture was not mentioned to me once So that's quite a concerning thing to find out years later that the animal agriculture industry is the single most destructive industry on the face of our planet in terms of water use, in terms of land loss, in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, in terms of lives lost. You know, over 50 billion land animals slaughtered a year for food and byproducts, that's a lot. The waste from these industries. So a dairy farm with only 2,500 cows creates the same amount of waste from about a city of 400,000 people. And we've got over 1 million dairy cows in Australia. That's a lot of food. Jeez. And there's no pesky laws requiring farmers to treat the waste that's coming from these creatures. So we have cities, we have sewage systems where we are polluting fresh water, which is not a good thing, but all the farm animals and all their waste goes into the rivers. We then use that water to spray our own food, to grow crops, to drink and consume. So really the waste is sort of pervasive and it's entering all levels of our food and our system. So I was quite let down that this institution that I've studied, which was expected to be an independent and critical thinking institution, wasn't equipping scientists such as myself with the fact, why did we know about this? Now the United Nations came out with a pretty heavy report back in 2006 which said the livestock industry is an absolute ecological disaster. This is a threat to our planet and it needs to be addressed.
That was cool.
Now I haven't heard about this.
Cool.
How you doing, darling? Good? Good smile.
Throw it out the window.
The UN came out, say 10 years ago and said this needs to be addressed, it's a global concern. However, it's quite a challenging thing to address because people are obviously depending on their livelihoods from these industries. People need food that's coming from these industries, so it's not necessarily an easy thing to tackle and address. However, more needs to be done. So we'd like to think that the environmentalists are being trained up with the facts and the knowledge to be able to share it with people and make a difference, but personally I hadn't engaged in any of this content through university 4 years. We can't expect the public to be aware of what's happening. So one of the reasons why I'm here sharing this information with you is because I wasn't given the opportunity to learn about this stuff at a tertiary level, and people have the right to know the truth and then be empowered to make decisions based off that truth, what best resonates with them. So we'd expect, if this is the single most destructive industry, that environmental organisations are going to be addressing it. We'd love to think that. Not the case. You jump on Greenpeace's website, you jump on Australian Conservation Foundation, Wilderness Society, they are not addressing animal agriculture and they are failing to tell people how destructive this industry is. So I'm currently studying environmental law. I'm doing my second degree at Griffith University, and I had an awesome opportunity to study animal ag, do some presentations on the issue for credit points, to actually get some academic credit under my belt, which was an absolute privilege. I did a bit of research into the animal ag industry and looked at the current efforts that's happening across the globe to address the industry and really analyse what environmental organisations are doing. So I've just got some figures here. Awesome. So just take an Australian Conservation Foundation, who have a history of 55 decades of addressing environmental concerns, one of the leading in Australia. They've got a rich, varied history of environmental campaigns, and currently none of their current campaigns are addressing the agriculture industry. If this has changed in the last few months, my apologies, but they haven't been addressing this industry. Doing a search on their website, their full database of articles, media reports, everything like that, they've got so there's 6,700 results for the word energy, and mining has close to 3,000 results. Now, agriculture, not animal ag, just agriculture, there were 110 references for agriculture, with 0 references to animal agriculture in their entire database. So if this is the single biggest issue that we need to be focusing on, why aren't these guys championing it? Why are they not addressing these issues? The same thing with Greenpeace, with Wilderness Society, WWF as well. I won't go through all those figures, but jump on the website for yourself, see how little information is out there. And I had an awesome opportunity last year to speak to the CEO of Greenpeace Asia Pacific at a conference I was attending, and I asked him, if we've got an absolute ecological disaster here, why aren't Greenpeace addressing these issues? They should be at the forefront of our efforts. They should be at the forefront of sharing information. Now, there was a conference of maybe 150 people there, and I wanted to put this question to him so he can respond to everyone, not just myself. Everyone deserves an answer as to why there's been inaction. And he gave me a very brief response and said, oh, we are addressing animal ag, we're doing some things in the Amazon, and yeah, we are. So I spoke to him after, and he ended up saying that Greenpeace do not disseminate information. And I think that's pretty much what Greenpeace do. They give people information, they give people the facts, empower them to make difference and changes in their lives. They'll focus on a campaign like palm oil, for example. They'll focus on issues like recycling because they are easier to do. Now, they don't require a lot of sacrifice from people and don't require people to change a lot to address those issues. So the reason why these environmental organisations aren't addressing animal ag is actually because of the solutions. How do we actually address these issues? And it comes down to our consumption and our diet and what industries we're actually supporting. So when I found out that the cheapest, quickest way to minimise my environmental footprint was to actually adopt a vegan plant-based diet, this was hard for me to swallow. I've spent years and years thinking I'm doing the sustainable thing, I'm recycling, I'm having shorter showers. These are things that make me feel good because I'm an environmentalist. And I'm sure almost everyone here today has assembled for EcoFest because they are concerned about the environment. They want to do as much as they can to minimise their footprint and find out more and help other people make those connections as well. But if we're not being told the facts, what do we know? We're kept sort of suppressed, and we are just told that if you just recycle and you do these few things, you're going to be doing your part. This is how these environmental organisations have operated. They are operating off funding, and they need people to support them. So if you can sign a petition and say, yes, I don't want to support mining or palm oil, whatever that may be, it's very easy to do. It doesn't require us to do much. However, when we find out, if we want to tackle the single most destructive industry, we need to change what we're consuming, change our diets. So this was so hard for me to swallow because coming through my studies and growing up around the ocean, my relationship with animals and with this planet has shifted over the last 25 years significantly. My relationship with nature used to be, I'd see fish and sea life either in my aquariums at home, on DVDs or VCRs back then, in books, and either on the end of my fishing line or on my plate. That was my connection with the ocean or seeing them while I was diving. To then find out that, hey, if I really want to minimise my footprint, I've got to challenge what I'm doing. And it's a challenging question to ask. How far are we willing to go to align our actions with our values and beliefs? So we've got the United Nations who submitted a report and said that the way we can address this issue is it's imperative, and we have a global shift, and it's urgent, to a plant-based vegan diet. If you don't think the UN has said something like this, jump online, have a read of the articles, it's there. And it's quite confronting because we haven't heard about this stuff, and it shatters what we thought was the best way to be sustainable. There's plenty of other things that are also important. Looking at palm oil, looking at recycling, they're all important things to do. However, the impact they're having on our footprint is much smaller compared to our diets. So there's a lot of challenges in adopting this plant-based diet if we want to actually minimise our footprint. And I've spent years and years grappling with these issues and realising it's not necessarily an easy shift to make. So when we're not being told the facts, then obviously we can't really take action on it. Environmental organisations aren't addressing it because they need to tell people, hey, if you want to minimise your footprint, go vegan. That'll get people's backs up. It challenges us to our core because most of us have been brought up in a society where we are eating animals. We're eating animal products because that's the way things have been. That's been the status quo. And anything that challenges that will be considered extreme, as I once thought. I once thought veganism was an extremely extreme thing to do, and my perspectives and opinions have changed on this over the years. Now, one thing which I found extremely relevant was a belief system and an ideology known as carnism. I'll try to keep this as simple as possible. So this belief system actually conditions us to eat certain animals. It's a belief system which says humans are at the top. The next important animals, maybe exotic animals like your whales and your lions and your cheetahs and this sort of stuff. And then we've got, perhaps our domesticated animals, our dogs, our cats. And the animals after that are maybe your food animals, and then your rodents and your pest animals. It's a very speciesist perspective to see us at the top, to go, these animals are more important than these, and these are more important than those. Now, my studies have reinforced this. The indoctrination, the instilling of certain beliefs has been perpetuated even at university. They tell us these animals are important for conservation, and these are least important. And your food animals, nah, they've got no right to live. Don't worry about them. So it's a sort of whole system which is keeping us consuming these products. We've got the law in place which tells us that animals are property. It tells us that animals are objects, and it says they don't want to live. They're just something to be used and exploited. So if we have a legal system set up which tells us animals are there to be exploited and commodified and used, naturally things are going to be supporting that. And we've got, for example, nutritional information which has been telling us that we've got to consume animal products in order to survive and be healthy, which I once believed as well. I thought we needed to be consuming animal products to survive. I've been vegan for a few years now, and you look at vegan athletes around, and the world's strongest man, I believe at the moment, is a vegan, he's a solid German fella. So it's a myth to think that we need to consume animal products in order to survive and thrive. By all means, go check out the research yourself. It's quite concerning once we start finding out the flip side of what we believe for all of our lives. And finding out that when I was younger, I would go snorkeling, and I'd see marine creatures, I'd see fish, all the octopuses, and I'm sure a lot of people here have spent some time in and around the oceans and the rivers and stuff like that. And we developed a very deep bond and connection with these ecosystems. They refresh our souls, they keep us happy, they give us clarity. And being able to spend some time underwater and then come back up on land and then go and order fish and chips and pay someone to kill fish so I can have some food, doesn't sit right. It sort of makes you feel a bit weird at the back of your head going, I say I love animals and marine creatures, I'm a marine biologist, I'm a conservationist, but I'm still either eating and killing animals myself or paying people to do it. And it's something that I've only started questioning over the last few years. And that was hard for me to question. It's one of the biggest questions I've posed to myself throughout my life. I want to act with integrity, I want to look after the oceans. Why am I still eating sea life? Our ocean's in a very concerning state at the moment. And the belief system of carnism tells us that we need to eat animals because it's normal, natural, and necessary. And I'd urge you all to explore this stuff, because I found out that it's not actually normal, natural, or necessary for us to consume animals. There's no physiological necessity for us to be consuming animal products, and we're having a very big, real impact on the environment through our consumption. So when I started realizing that I want to minimize my footprint, I'm a marine scientist, I love the ocean, I'm going to do my bit, and if I still want to eat fish, what do? I eat the sustainable fish, sustainable stuff, It's got the tick of approval on it. And I would go through and spend days researching which tuna brand had the most dolphin-friendly products and which one was the better for the ecosystems, because I wanted to feel good that what I'm eating isn't affecting the environment, even though I was directly eating what I apparently loved. So I jumped on board with the sustainable seafood myth for a very, very long time, and then started just eating the fish that I caught, that I speared fish, because I didn't want to be engaging in an industry that was a middleman. I just wanted to take it myself, because that's the cleanest, cheapest, most effective way for me to do what I want. But what I realized is that by supporting, by buying, say, the sustainable seafood, the only reason these terms are there are to make consumers like myself for a very long time, and probably a lot of people here, feel comfortable about our exploitation. That's it. And there may be some scientific basis to the claims that it's sustainable and this is a better fish stock, sure, but they don't want to challenge us and our consumption. They don't want to shake people up. They want to keep people feeling comfortable about what they're doing, what they're consuming, and that's something that I think needs to stop. We need to stop feeling comfortable about our exploitation and the impact we're having on our planet. We need to align our actions with our values. And so then I thought, no, I need to cut out, I need to stop eating sea life if I want to protect it. And it seems, now looking back, it seems quite simple. If you love something, the first thing you do is not eat it, not kill it, right? It didn't make sense for years and years, but now I see a bit more clearly. And, you know, just like, you know, dog lovers don't eat dogs, animal lovers don't eat animals. It's very simple. And we're up against a lot of conditioning for decades and decades telling us that we should eat animals and consume this and make the sustainable options and support those sustainable options. Now, I just urge everyone to look into the claims that you know, a product is sustainable or that it's eco, because a lot of the time the things I was supporting out of the goodwill of my heart to minimise my impact wasn't actually a sustainable option. It was just being sold to me so I can be a consumer of a product. And it's now that I look back on it, I was sucked into that system, and other people may not be, and other people may also be sucked into that. And it's not about the whole system has been rigged to keep us consuming and keep us exploiting animals and loving certain animals. So coming through my studies, I found out, hey, as I said, veganism, that's the best way to minimise my footprint. I cried and cried myself to sleep for nights and nights on end when I found out there's a better way for me to minimise my footprint, which was to go vegan. And it was a challenging step for me to make because it goes against everything I thought I was, but I can, and this is my personal experience, once I went vegan, my actions and beliefs actually lined up for the first time in my life. I considered myself to be a compassionate person, an environmentalist. Now I was minimising my footprint in the best possible way that I could, that I was aware of. You know, I wanted to do as much as I could to minimise my footprint, and this required some changes from me. And I didn't want to be complacent, and I didn't want to just fob things off. I wanted to do as much as I could. Now, through that process, I think I've gone through, as a lot of people have, a re-evaluation of our relationship with nature and our relationship with other species. You know, I'm sure other people can relate to the relationship they've had with sea life when they play it or fishing. You know, that's just the way things have been. That's been our culture. I've been brought up in an oceanside culture and fishing and you know, hunting, gathering and that sort of stuff. But we don't need to do that at the moment. There was a time in the past we did. We had to hunt. We had to take natural resources to survive. But we don't need to consume animal products out of necessity anymore. And we've got options in what we want to support. So I think once we start questioning our relationship with nature and we really connect with what's giving us life and the other members of the earth community, the fish, the pandas, the little insects running around, all the other species form a part of the community that we're a part of. We're all dependent on each other for our existence, from the earth systems to provide us with air and you know, clean water and pollination from the bees. Everything sort of plays a really interesting role. And when we start questioning our role within the planet and our role in relationship with nature, it can really challenge our values and beliefs. And that was one of the hardest things for me to do in my life, was realise I need to question what I'm doing. And when I did make that decision, awesome. It felt in alignment and this stuff resonated with me. So the end of the day, we've underestimated the influence we can have. And everyone can make a change in their day-to-day lives with what they can do, what they support and what they consume. Industries like the animal agriculture sector are dependent on consumers buying a product. So They need us to buy products because that's what's making. Hey, buddy. Keeps their profits coming through, so our money talks. And if anyone ever tells you you cannot make a difference, rubbish, absolutely rubbish, because we all can. And the cumulative effect of our individual actions should never be underestimated. In Queensland, for example, recreational fishermen catch more than the commercial fishermen in the whole state. I believe it's the same thing in New South Wales. So I used to get so angry at the commercial fishermen with their nets and their pillaging of our oceans. Then I find out every person with their rods and who's gone spearfishing on the weekend is taking more out of the oceans than all the commercial fishermen. That blew my mind. So we really do have a huge impact if people are supporting certain industries and doing the same thing. So imagine if we didn't support these industries. Imagine if we stopped doing and contributing to industries that are inflicting suffering on sentient creatures. You know, the world's going to be a very, very different place. And I do see, hopeful that we're going to have a transformation in culture and people who are able to reconnect to their core values, which I think is compassion and love. At our core, us as humans are full of love. So I take, there's one of the kids here, I take this beautiful young girl here, I put in front of her, say, a rabbit and a carrot. My money is that she's not going to rip the head off the bunny rabbit and play with the carrot. I reckon she's going to play with the bunny rabbit and eat the carrot. Now, if anyone thinks otherwise, sure, I'd love to see a young child go violent on an animal, rip its head off and hurt it. That's at our core. I think that's who we are as species. And we've been conditioned out of love and compassion by the whole system, by our legal system, by nutritional information, by corporations wanting to sell us a product. Once we reconnect, we reevaluate our values and we align them with who we are, we're going to have a wonderful positive impact on this planet. And I encourage people to explore this stuff. If you're skeptical about anything I've said, come have a chat later. I'll give you all the references, find out for yourself. As a scientist, we are always encouraging skepticism and to question everything. Go find this stuff out for yourself, do your research, and everyone can make a difference. And fish are friends, not food. It took me 23 years to realise this. Our oceans are absolutely in a horrendous state. 75% of our ocean's fisheries are either overexploited, fully exploited, or depleted. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. And the reason why this is happening is because of, well, according to WWF, the reason why there's overfishing is because there's illegal fishermen, it's unregulated, there's destructive technologies. No mention of we are supporting the industries. We need to take responsibility, not governments. Maybe they might help one day. Not industry, they just want to make money. It's up to us. We can make a difference. Thank you for your time today, guys. And if anyone wants to have a chat, happy to answer some questions. I've just started the last year doing some small presentations like this, so if you wanted to keep up to date with anything that I'm up to, I've got an Instagram account which I've just sort of re-engaged with. It's vegan vibes, and instead of an E in the vibes, it's just a 3. If you want to check out some stuff and some fun facts, I'll check it out and enjoy the rest of the day, guys. And thank you for your time and energy and support.
Well done.
Was his name Scott Williams? Wallace Scott.
His website, he said, what was it?